Hi, my name is Lee Relvis, and from MFA, no MFA. I'm here today speaking as one of the 7 artists who made up the incoming class of MFA students at USC Roski School of Art and Design. Thank you. After 9 months this past May, we collectively, as an entire class, dropped out of the program in reaction to the school's reneging on funding and curricular promises made to us, as a protest against the normalization of massive student debt, and to act on our desire to put our energies towards structures that encourage participation, agency, more weirdness, and more joy. But before I get to the joy part, I wanted to draw a frame around our dropout action in this specific moment. Actively talking about difference and privilege is especially important in the light of the violence of white supremacy and erasure that students and faculty of color are experiencing and confronting right now at the University of Missouri, Yale, and campuses across the country. And these communities can't walk away from their experiences of and their responses to racism any more than a person could drop out of her own skin. So we want to take a moment to acknowledge our privilege in being able to walk away from our institution despite the dysfunction, despite the debt, and we want to stand in solidarity with the students, faculty, and communities responding to these very urgent conditions. Zora Neale Hurston wrote, "Gods always behave like the people who make them." And today, I want to remix that statement by saying educational institutions always behave like the people who make them. Over the past century, we've had many makers of the institution, resulting today in a university that is a shimmering juggernaut of contradiction, a site formed as strongly by exclusivity, elitism, and profit as it is by access and emancipation, each conflicting and coexisting with each other daily. In this specific moment, in addition to those histories, we have an educational institution increasingly made by and in the image of the corporation. We see this corporate model in the simple facts that USC tuition, like other universities, has increased an astounding 92% since 2001, while compensation for USC's top 8 executives has more than tripled since 2001. Meanwhile, 80% of all faculty at USC is adjunct faculty, who are often paid less than the minimum wage. Now, this severe imbalance creates leadership structures that rarely feel the impact of the systems they manage and are most often held unaccountable for the negative consequences of these systems on others. This distance leadership is enthralled to a disembodied, technocentric worldview that believes that everything can be measured empirically, assigned value, and monetized for maximum profit. And this worldview becomes more entrenched the more it ignores the conditions and concerns of the classroom. These leaders are interested in short-term extreme changes which mimic metric-tinged results to serve as a false front of their effectiveness and innovation capabilities. And this lavishly funded leadership defends their actions by freely employing an austerity rhetoric while never experiencing the austerity measures themselves. The remaking of the educational institution in the image of a corporation is not total, it's not complete. I want to look at everything as complicated as it really is. But because this remaking was so quickly, forcefully, and incompetently attempted at Roski, it had really clear effects to those of us experiencing them. Eric Kamul was appointed dean of the Roski School in May 2013, despite having no background or expertise in the visual arts field whatsoever. She was simultaneously named director of the Academy for Arts, Technology, and the Business of Innovation, a new school within USC birthed with a $70 million donation. Of this grand endowment, not a single dollar went to student scholarships. As this new dean began to implement her systems over at Roski, there seemed to be a near immediate reversal of the tangible and the intangible. And it was the intangible activity of what happens in the studio that was quickly targeted. New curriculum was proposed without studio visits, the thesis paper waited over the thesis show, and the very idea of a close long-term mentorship with the core faculty jettisoned, because the work we did in our studios, the intangible processes of looking and learning and thinking, the intimacy of giving each other's work our close attention was dismissed, deemed irrelevant, without a place in the university because it couldn't be easily measured, it could not be statisticized, and it could not be any further monetized. Meanwhile, every attempt was made to make our tangible material concerns irrelevant. We were suddenly and almost offhandedly presented with a new funding threshold that would potentially double the amount of debt we thought we would graduate with. When we pointed to documents clearly stating our existing funding packages, we were framed as being demanding, simply for advocating for the things the school had already promised us. As if we were employees who had gotten bad Yelp reviews, apparently the problem was with our attitudes. Contracts were broken by denying there had ever been a contract. Promises were diminished into unfortunate mistakes. It was almost hypnotizing and certainly infantilizing, the way these administrators tried to make the reality of tens of thousands of dollars of debt disappear from our minds. But ultimately, it was my body that remembered the debt. When I started grad school, I had been paying off my undergrad loans for 11 years. Every time I was tempted to go with the status quo and pile on that debt, I remembered the envelopes from Sallie Mae. And later on, a collection agency showing up in the mail, the black type flickering to red, signaling delinquency, the distracting panic that smudged my vision when I didn't have the money for it, the surge of adrenaline swelling the tips of my fingers when Kevin from the collection agency called and demanded $500, and the defiant embarrassment electrifying the skin of my cheeks when I offered them $50 instead. This is the muscle memory of debt. And it was this bodily memory of debt that was triggered every time the Roski administration attempted to make debt inconsequential and incorporeal. We talked so much with each other. We were huddled in the parking lot. We were always hunched around the kitchen table. And as we talked, we realized how different our various positions were. We were at different points in our lives. We came from different cultures and backgrounds. We had varying levels of support from the larger art world. We were taking on different amounts of debt to be in the program. We enjoyed different privileges, and we would suffer different losses. And yet finally, at different speeds and for different reasons, we all came to the decision to leave the program together. After we made our collective decision, we kept getting all these contradictory emails from the administration. Instead of crying the way I would always do, we would start laughing. And that's when I felt like we had made the right decision, when we all started laughing. Our individual decisions transformed into one collective action. And I think our laughter was an expression of that sudden magic. Now, Zora Neale Hurston also wrote, "The dream is the truth." And I want to share a few of our dreams/truths that we came to in our 9 months of collective decision-making. That education should give you more options, not fewer options. That debt on such a scale that is now normal is invisibly inscribed on and held in our bodies, and often limits movement even as it provides access. That there's work to be done inside the institution, and there's work to be done from outside the institution. That school should never be the only option for material and immaterial support for people who want to think and create. That our refusal is not an absence, but an elsewhere. That our decision of collective dropout was deliberated by each of us at different speeds for different reasons from different moments in our lives. And our collective decision should not flatten those differences, but instead highlight the incredible fact that collective action can be taken and is taken by people who exist in overlapping realities. This last one seems like the most important, being with people. There's no terms for this friendship. And we came to this truth. It's not a dropout because there is no out. We're still in the stew of debt and autonomy, art and money, access and exclusivity. No solutions have been found. After the one-way movement of dropping out, since then our experiences have become diffuse, dispersed, scattered, although we continue to work together. As the 7 of us look for jobs again, look for new places to live, try to find new solutions to the old problems of time and money and art and resources, it's hard to know what the impact of our dropout is today and the next week and in the next year. But simply after 9 months of attempting to speak back to the institution, after 9 months of which material realities were belittled and our immaterial work was devalued, we actively choose to put our energies elsewhere. We decide to become the makers of something else. We ask different questions, and here they are. Not what are we up against, but where are the openings? Not where are the resources, but what are our resourcefulness? What can we do when we do it together? Thank you.
Thank you for that unexpected and beautiful musical performance.
Thank you.
As well as for the thorough elucidation of why people should not be getting an MFA. One thing I'm wondering about is, what happens to people who do get the MFA? And what I'm particularly curious about is, this is a very formal, structured process that's supposed to teach you how to be creative. So what's the effect of an MFA program on creativity itself?
Oh my gosh. That is like a huge question.
Can you sing us a response maybe, or?
Our group, I think as a whole, we came to the program with a lot of ambivalence already. And I know I've spoken to some people who are very kind of against MFAs because they feel like it professionalizes artwork and for me, I think about just the fact that almost everyone in my class when we started grad school went to the health center at the school when we started because we hadn't had health insurance for 10 years. So for me, creativity can be everywhere. You can experience it in all different, and I think it has many different effects, MFA or no MFA. But for us, we just wanted the time, the money, and the resources. That was what an MFA meant to us. Nothing else, really.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.